Hey guys, it's Brian with PhoneArena, and we're going to take a quick look at the LG Nexus 5 versus the Samsung Galaxy Note 3. Now let's start with the Note 3. Obviously this is a much bigger device. This is a 5.7-inch display, so it is more in the phablet space versus the Nexus 5, which is a traditional phone, although with a 5-inch display it's really not all that small itself. Both devices offer a 1080p experience, but because the Note 3 has a larger display, of course you're going to have a smaller PPI on that. That said, both screens are very, very good. You're not really going to find any pixels. They both have real high PPI, so even though the Nexus 5 is denser, it's kind of imperceptible by the eye. Now, one difference is the fact that the Note 3 uses an AMOLED display versus the Nexus 5 using an IPS display. So there is going to be some brighter, more vibrant colors on the Note versus the LG, deeper blacks, but the LG is also going to have a little bit more true to life colors. AMOLED screens tend to saturate. So it's kind of a personal opinion which one you prefer. They're both fantastic screens and you're not really going to go wrong with either of them. Taking a quick look at the design between the two, both of them are heavily plastic. The Note 3, of course, has the removable back with the large battery under there. One of the things we really don't like about the Note 3, and we'll see if we can capture this, but you see you have some stitching, and this is supposed to look like leather on the back. Really, it's just plastic. These are injection molding. This back is actually really thin, so it kind of gives the Note 3 not only a cheap feel, but a cheap look to go along with this ribbed housing along the side with the chrome trim. And then also, as usual with the Samsung devices, we're going to see the fact that you have the physical home key and the back and menu keys. With the back key typically on the left, Samsung has moved that to the right, which is a little disorienting if you're used to other manufacturers. Like we mentioned, the back does come off here, so it takes a little bit of prying. There we go. But you can see large battery, micro SD slot, which the Nexus 5 does not have, and you see the SIM card as well. One of the things we kind of surprisingly found we didn't like about the Note 3 is right down here where you have the charging port, and this is the new micro USB 3. We tend to hold our phones with our pinky down here just for some added support, and that is exactly where this really thin battery door is, and it's actually kind of sharp and digs into our fingers a bit, so not the greatest design in terms of ergonomics there. Other than that, fairly standard layout for both phones, power button and volume rockers on the side, headphone jacks on top, charging ports on the bottom. You can see the Nexus does have speakers down here, although it's really just one speaker. The other one is the microphone. And that's pretty much what we can say about the design. The Nexus 5 feels a little bit better in the hand thanks to its smaller profile. The plastic that LG uses is a very nice soft touch feel here. It is worth noting that the white version of the Nexus 5, it's a bit slipperier, and users have complained that it doesn't feel as nice as the black, and we do have to agree with that. So if you're looking for feel, we definitely recommend the black. Although if you're putting a case on it, really doesn't matter with either of them. So the Note 3, obviously a much bigger device, so it's a lot more comfortable to use with two hands unless you just have giant hands. So that's something to come into play, especially for those with the smaller hands of the group. The Note 3 can be a little bit unwieldy to use. Just a brief touch on the interface here. Of course, the Nexus is going to be running pure Android here. This is Android 4.4 KitKat. You can see a few visual design changes. We've got the transparency down at the top and the bottom here on the home screen. With the new launcher, you have Google Now just a swipe away. There's a little bit redesign as to how you add wallpapers and widgets, which is nice. You can add as many pages as you want. You simply just drag a widget over to an empty page and it will put it in there and add that new page. So it takes a little bit getting used to at first. If you empty out a page, it will completely delete that. So also something to be aware of. In terms of performance, it is absolutely buttery smooth. It is lightning fast. It is every adjective you can use to describe just how quickly this device runs. We have not had any hiccups, any stutters, anything like that. So It runs on the Qualcomm 800 chipset. It's quad-core 2.3 gigahertz paired with 2 gigs of DDR3 RAM, the Adreno 330 GPU, so everything is really, really fast here. It is just blazing fast. We have no performance issues whatsoever. New version of Android is really nice. A lot of under-the-hood improvements for lower-end devices and less memory needed, but that also makes a difference on the higher-end devices with plenty of memory and processing power. Samsung, of course, uses their TouchWiz UI here, something we're very familiar with. The Nature UI that we saw about a year ago has now been expanded again with the Note 3. So a lot of the S features that you're used to, nothing too much different here. We have the multi-window that we can run, of course. This also runs on the Snapdragon 800 processor. It does have 3 gigs of RAM, so it's a little bit beefier on the RAM, but you have to keep in mind that the operating system is much heavier than the stock Android, so can't really say we have any performance difference between the two. It's really going to come down to user preference here. For our money, we much prefer the stock Android. Samsung just kind of makes everything a lot bigger. As you can see, there's just all kinds of toggles here. The settings menu has been broken down into tabs, so it's a little bit different to figure out where things are these days. And just with all the different various Samsung features, constant balloons popping up the first few days you use the device, telling you little things, it can get a bit overbearing. So it does offer a lot of nice features, though. So some of the things like the Smart Stay and the Smart Scroll are really nice. The multi-window feature. Of course, you do have the S Pen here. As you can see, we're not actually touching the device. We're just kind of hovering over. It's really great. There's the S Pen, or the Pen Up, excuse us, app is nice to make drawings and just discover drawings from some really nice artists out there. So definitely some merit, and Samsung does some good use with the extra screen space on the Note 3. But like we said, the operating system is a little bit overcomplicated, a little bit. It doesn't make a ton of use of space. As you can see, only this much screen is actually being used, whereas you're wasting that much. You could definitely put some more on there, some better widgets, things like that. Just a quick look at web page rendering here. We really don't have too much difference between the two devices. You can see the Note 3 does it just fine. You got auto rotate, you got pinch to zoom, you have double tap to zoom. So no problems with web browsing. Of course, both devices do run on LTE. It's one of the nice things about the Nexus 5 that Google finally included LTE on the device, but the internet experience is very similar on both of them. We'll give the edge to the Note 3 just because it's got that larger display, which is nice. Like we said, it also has a Smart Scroll feature, so it can kind of notice when your eyes are scrolling down a page. However, that only works with the stock internet browser. It does not work with Google Chrome, which we prefer, so a little bit of a drawback there. But overall, great internet performance on both of these devices, but the larger screen of the Note 3 gets our nod. Same thing can be said with multimedia. Of course, with the larger screen, both of them being 1080p, it's just nicer to watch videos on the bigger display. Just a quick look at the camera interfaces here. Here we have Samsung. Again, this is really nothing new. We've seen this on the Galaxy S4 and some other devices. It's a very good camera app. It's definitely better and gives you a lot more options than the stock Android app. The shutter speed is really quick. Surprisingly, though, even though this features a 13 megapixel camera, we had better results with our Nexus 5 in terms of actual results and what we saw there. So you can see the Nexus 5 camera app and just the stock Android camera app is a lot more minimalistic, a lot more simplistic. You have the photosphere. Google's new HDR Plus mode that they're touting really worked. You take a look at our sample pictures and you can see we've got some with and without HDR, and then you can see some comparisons with the Galaxy Note. And we definitely have seen better cameras, but the the Nexus 5 is really a strong performer, especially under great lighting conditions, or I'm sorry, just even good lighting conditions. It's much improved over what we've seen from Nexus devices in the past. So good job with Google there on improving that, and it sounds like there may be some more software improvements coming to make that an even better experience. In terms of the phone performance on these devices, callers definitely preferred the Nexus 5. They said the Galaxy Note was pretty hollow. It sounded like we were very distant, and they really had to concentrate on the conversation. Whereas with the Nexus 5, there's still some slight hollowness, but in general, we sounded really good, really clear. To us, color sounded just fine. The Galaxy Note, of course, has a more traditional speaker design. There are some complaints about the small earpiece here on the Nexus 5. We haven't had any real issues, but we will say, you know, if you're in really loud environments, yes, you're going to have some problems with volume. But that's true for most phones. The Note was louder, but color sounded just fine on both of these devices for us. A couple other little things to wrap up here. The battery life. The Note 3, of course, is going to outperform it. It's just got a giant battery. It's also user replaceable, which is really nice. But over normal use, the Nexus 5 is going to get most users through the day without a problem. We have yet to have to top it off by the end of the day. Normally we're sitting at about 30 to 40% by the time we come home around 9 o'clock at night. So not a big deal there. Obviously, if you're going to have the screen on all the time, that's going to affect that performance. We will say that the Nexus 5 really sleeps well. It drains just over about 1% an hour, so if you're not using your phone, if it's just sitting in the pocket, you're not going to be losing anything, unless, of course, you're bouncing in and out of signal, and that's true with any phone on there. Quick little wrap up here. There's going to be a lot of preference as to which device you like better. It really, first off, depends on how big your hands are. You know, if you have small hands, the Note 3 is probably going to be out of reach for you. In terms of our opinion, we like the feel of the Nexus 5 better. It's just more comfortable in the hands. We really have to use two hands to use the Note 3 comfortably, even though we don't have small hands by any means. We also like the design of the Nexus 5 better. It's very understated, it's very muted, but it's very purposeful. It feels great in the hands, a soft touch plastic, just the little angles. It just makes the phone really comfortable to hold. And the display on both of these devices, of course, is really great, so you're going to have a good experience with that no matter which one you choose. We really like the stock Android software. Android 4.4 KitKat has been fantastic so far. Like we said, this phone absolutely flies, no problems. But then, again, we're not really noticing any hiccups with the Samsung software either, so that is nice. Really need to just choose what you want in your device. If you're looking for the big screen, if you're looking for the replaceable battery, obviously the Galaxy Note 3 is going to be the phone of choice for you. But if you're looking for a stock Google experience, if you're looking for a lightweight, nimble operating system, a little bit more comfortable to hold in the hand, slightly better phone and camera performance, and of course the timely updates, and last but definitely not least, half the price of the Galaxy Note 3, then the LG Nexus 5 is a very strong contender.